Hi guys, it's Nick, the ASMR nerd, and welcome to another episode of Relaxing Reviews. Hey, guess what I've got for you today? That's right, you guessed it. It's another keyboard. Big surprise. But this keyboard is no ordinary keyboard. For one, it's a 60% design, which means it is very compact. It lacks the numpad, it lacks the nav cluster, the arrow keys, and the entire function row along the top. So a very small footprint on this keyboard. Now, that in and of itself is not particularly noteworthy. There are a lot of 60% keyboards out there on the market, but what if I told you that this one was wireless? Well, that's interesting. There aren't that many 60% wireless mechanical keyboards available on the market, but I have reviewed one here on the channel before. You might remember the Anne Pro, which is one of my very favorite keyboards actually that I've reviewed here on the channel. So we've seen a wireless 60% mechanical keyboard before, but what if I told you that the keyboard that I'm reviewing today is available for under $40 US? Maybe I have your attention now. The keyboard that we're going to be looking at today is the K61WS from a company called Velocifire. And yes, it is indeed available for $39.99 as of the time of recording, although I have seen it for cheaper by a dollar or two previously, so the price seems to fluctuate a little bit. There is, of course, a purchase link down in the video description if you're interested in this board and you like what you see as we progress through the review today. I'd just like to remind people of that. But really, this board is a no-frills board. I'm not going to beat around the bush. This is a very plain board in a lot of ways, with the exception of being wireless and the exception of being a compact 60% design. There's not a lot else going on. There's no RGB backlighting, there's no macro recording, there's no software, there's no rebinding of keys or alternative modes, nothing like that. And for those reasons, this is not really considered a board for gamers, at least not according to Velocifire. They target this board more at programmers and at typists and that sort of productivity based work. That being said, I think there's a lot of overlap between those demographics and the gamer demographic, and I think that a lot of all of those audiences probably watch these videos. So I thought that it would be worth reviewing for you guys because it is a fairly unique product, largely by virtue of this combination of mechanical keyboard, 60% wireless, and $40 US or under. So another interesting thing about this board is that it doesn't use Bluetooth. The Anne Pro that I reviewed previously is a Bluetooth keyboard. It'll connect to your phone, your laptop, whatever has Bluetooth on it. This board, the K61WS from Velocifire, actually uses a 2.4 gigahertz USB wireless receiver, which has benefits and drawbacks. One benefit is that it's potentially a stronger connection and it potentially has longer range. A drawback is that you need a USB port on your device to use it, so you're not going to be able to use this on, say, your average smartphone or anything like that. But nonetheless, I think this board has a lot going for it, and I am really keen to see how it stacks up against, for instance, the Open's Anne Pro. Velocifire very kindly sent over a review sample for us to look at here today, so without further ado, let's take a closer look at the K61WS wireless mechanical keyboard. And here we have Velocifire's K61WS in box, and there's not much to see on the outside. It comes in this completely nondescript brown cardboard box with literally nothing on the outside. Nothing. Oh, I lied. I'm sorry. It does have a sticker. I don't know how I missed this when I looked at it earlier. It says Velocifire model K61WS / KB115. So perhaps it has a pair of model numbers. I'm not sure. 2.4 gigahertz wireless mechanical keyboard made in China. There you go. Okay, so it does have a product identifier on the box. That's probably good because I was a little shocked at how bare it was. But otherwise, nothing. Probably to keep costs down, right? That would be my guess. Okay. Well, let's open this up. You can probably tell the box is a little bit mashed up as well. But it doesn't matter too much because there's, again, nothing on the outside. So as long as everything inside is intact, then we're okay. Alright, so inside we have a similarly no-nonsense kind of presentation. Here's our keyboard in plastic. We have this actually really good looking padding, foam padding inside here, which I'm sure has afforded this board a decent amount of protection despite the ragged appearance of the box. And a couple of other items here, but let's lift the board out first. This is heavy. This is heavier than I expected, actually. That thing is really heavy. Not in a bad way, either. So here we've got a little bit of styrofoam padding, like I said, which I'm sure does a good job of protecting that board. We've got a USB cable, which we'll look at in just a second. A little package of some extras, which we'll also look at in a moment. And sort of instruction guide, I call it. Or I say sort of because it's just one page. There's some stuff on the back though, and we'll take a look at that as well. Otherwise, nothing. That's it. That's what we got. I would say that so far the term no frills would describe the experience with this board, or unboxing it at least. Alright, let's take a quick peek through at some of the items that we've got here. Let's take a look at this thing. So it says on the front here, mechanical keyboard manual for the K61WS from Velocifire. Has a schematic, like a diagram of the board. And on the back, it has some information you can see there. Talks about keyboard shortcuts and instructions for getting the keyboard working with the included wireless adapter. Turn on power switch, so it's got a dedicated power switch, which is nice actually, because the An Pro does not. Yes, USB cable, etc. So this is not a backlit keyboard, but it does have one indicator LED under the function key, which indicates whether it's charging or low on batteries or what. All the combinations you would expect for accessing the F keys, F1 through F10, or F12 I should say. And then a few other shortcuts here. Function and backspace for delete. Then it's got arrow keys, Windows lock, but that looks like it's about it, which is actually a bit surprising. There's no other nav cluster key shortcuts, like no home, no end, no page up, page down, which for some people that won't be a problem, but for others it really will. Okay, what else does it say here? Specifications. Model, yes, 2.4 gigahertz. Apparently it supports Android, so if you have an Android device with a full-size USB port, you could plug in the adapter and it would work. It operates within about a 10-meter range, it says there. Calls it work distance, which is, you know, that's totally respectable. That's what you're going to get out of any Bluetooth board, maybe more, actually. 1000 milliamp hour battery. Takes 3 to 4 hours to charge. Duration of use about 1080 hours. So this thing will last forever. For a very long time between recharges, which is great. Net weight's about 0.6 kilograms. Feels heavier than that, but it's just very dense, I guess, because it's not very big, right? Okay, so that's that. We'll take a quick peek at this here USB cable, which looks very simple. But yeah, it's a typical black vinyl covered USB cable with micro USB on one end. No branding or anything on the molding. And then USB-A on the other end. Again, no branding or anything. Nothing fancy. Got our ferrite choke here. Ferrite bead. And that's about it. Length. This thing looks like it's about, let's see, I would say a little over a meter, maybe a meter and a half, which is what, like 4 feet for you Imperial folks. Might even be a little bit shorter, 3 to 4 feet, so it's not a terribly long cable. But I believe, I'll have to test this in the typing test, but I believe that this board only communicates wirelessly. I think this is exclusively a charging cable. I do not think it transmits data over USB, or over wired USB anyway. I'll have to test that out, but I'm pretty sure that's what I read. So, and then we've got this little package of extras here. Let's open it up and see. So it just comes in this very crinkly plastic bag. It's just taped closed. Okay, so I actually knew what was in here because it shows it on the product page on Amazon. But we've got some extra keycaps, which is actually really nice. Little replacement caps, these bright red ones, which you could put on your WASD keys if you wanted. I will say they're pretty thin, these replacement caps, and we'll see if that carries over to the main caps on the board. But and these are not dyed, I don't think, or double shot or anything. There's no legends on them, of course. They're just blank, and I'm pretty sure they've just been coated in something. But you can see they're just a very, very thin ABS. But they're extras, you know, they're pack-ins, bonuses, so I'm not going to complain. At a keyboard of this price with this feature set, really, it's shocking that we get any pack-ins at all. And they're very shiny. Very, very shiny, as you can see. So, but nonetheless, 4 little spare keycaps which match the keycap puller, as is customary with mechanical keyboards. We get a little keycap puller. So there you go. Not too shabby, anyway. Alright, let's move on to the main event. So let's just pull this little beastie out of the plastic. Nothing much to see there, just plastic. Okay, so here is Velocifire's K61WS wireless 60% mechanical keyboard. And right off the bat, I really like the way this thing looks. I think it looks very sharp. You guys might have noticed by now that I am a big fan of minimalistic designs. I like clean designs, although I don't mind some RGB, but I like things that look pretty clean and refined, and I think this hits both of those, actually, both those targets. The legend on the keys is nice. It's not gamery, and nor would I expect it to be, actually. Velocifire came out and said, in fact, when they contacted me about reviewing this unit, that this is primarily aimed at programmers. Okay, sure, or typists, you know. But I thought that was a little bit funny, because as I was looking at that, shortcuts sheet over there, that manual, because there's no home, no end, no page up, no page down shortcuts, and I think those are used heavily by programmers, so that is a little surprising to me. But anyway, I said that, I think there's enough overlap in my audience between the people that watch my videos that this would be of interest to them, and I hope I was right about that. Even though it's not aimed primarily at gamers, that's what I'm getting at. But the point is that, yeah, the font does not look super gamery. It looks nice and clean and refined, and I quite like it. We'll talk about the keycaps in a second, but let's do the old 360 here. So the case, and this is pretty interesting. Check this out. Look at this. There are 2 USB ports, micro USB inputs on the back. And they are inputs, they both say in. I'll show you. Can you see it? Just above the port it says in. So we've got a pair of micro USB inputs, which means that we have our choice of whether we want to plug it in on the left side or the right side, which is actually very thoughtful. And I've never seen that. I've never seen that on any keyboard before. But it's great because maybe your PC tower sits on the left or on the right, and so this allows you to route your cable accordingly. So it's just a little thoughtful addition, actually, that I would not expect, again, on a board at this price point. So you can see that it sits at a low angle here. There's a little bit of tilt to the board, but I don't know, probably 5 degrees or something like that, not very much. The case is a fairly roughly textured, I'm going to guess ABS. You can see that texture there, but it's great because it really doesn't look like it picks up fingerprints easily, and it feels very solid. Nothing along the front lip, nothing on that side. It's a very Spartan appearance, and I like that. Let's take a look at the back. Alright, so there's a little bit more going on here. On the back, we've got, well, first of all, we've got our USB 2.4 gigahertz wireless adapter. Let's pull that out. Okay, so it sits in there quite loosely. Just kind of rests in there. And it's just a little black dongle. Nothing to see there, no branding, nothing. Now, one consideration with this board is that this is a, I don't know if proprietary is the right word, but it is the only adapter that will work with this board. I was looking through some of the Amazon questions and answers on the Amazon page, and yeah, don't lose this dongle if you get this board, because I do not know if you'll be able to get a replacement except from perhaps directly from Velocifire, and they do have contact information, I think, on that sheet over there. They at least have a website, but yeah, you don't want to lose that, or else you're going to be out of luck, because like I said, I do not believe that this transmits data over the wire, but I will test that out. So, oops, you can see this is just a little socket where that slots in. There we go. I think it might be magnetic, actually, now that I think about it. Because it kind of, yeah, I think it is. I think that's magnetic. That's cool. Alright, so we've got 4 textured feet on the back to prevent slippage. There's no pop-up feet, which is not super surprising because you don't see those very commonly on 60% boards. The An Pro has a very similar design with just 4 anti-slip feet, but no pop-out feet. And the incline of the board is fixed, so if you want it flat, well, that's too bad, you're out of luck, I guess. But this is not a very aggressive inclination, so but we'll see how it feels when I go to type on it. Then a couple of other points of interest on the back here. One is this right here. Check it out. It's a little on-off switch, a manual on-off switch. Feels very solid, even though it's a tiny little switch. It feels like a nice solid click. And this is awesome because it means you can turn it off when you're not using it and save some battery power. or if you have a couple of keyboards hooked up to your computer, which I will sometimes have like my An Pro paired with Bluetooth, and then another keyboard attached wirelessly, so or wired, I should say. Pardon. And so this would allow you to turn off the input from one of those boards. You know, if you have that set up like that. That is not the case for most people. I think most people probably just have one keyboard, but I'm special like that, I guess. Anyway, I really do appreciate that physical on-off switch, the hardware on-off switch, because again, the An Pro, which I use quite a bit, does not have one, and I would love it if it did. Then the rest of the stuff on the back here is, I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure this is the same sticker that we saw on the outside of the box, is it not? There's the model 2.4 gigahertz wireless mechanical keyboard made in China. I think this is the same or very similar to what we saw on the box. But hey, that's efficiency. That's what that is. Now, interestingly, nowhere has it said what kind of switches we have. It did not say it on the outside of the box. It did not say it. It does not say it on the board. I can tell you, this board has Temu Brown switches. At least it ought to, because that's what it says on the product page. So, yeah, if you're doing your homework and you're reading, you would know what kind of switches to expect here. But at least on the packaging or on the board itself, it does not divulge anything about the switches. All right, well, let's take a look at these keycaps here, shall we? We'll see if they are of reasonable quality. I will say they look pretty good. They are, well, I'll pull one off here. Let's pull off the escape key. Oop. There we go. Okay, so yes, we have no Temu Brown switch there, which we'll look at in a moment, but let's just talk keycaps. So these keycaps are ABS, I am fairly certain. They are fairly textured for ABS caps, actually, which is nice. I like a nice textured cap. In fact, the texture matches pretty closely to what you see on the case, which is nice. I assume, no, I may have assumed wrong. I totally did. Okay, so these are, I thought they would be pad printed, especially at this price point. I expected these to be just printed, but they are not. These are, I believe, double shot caps. Look at that. Because we've got the plastic, the black ABS layer on the outside, and then we have a white layer on the inside, which is what's giving us our legends. I'm pretty sure that's what's happening here. And that is fantastic, actually. These feel very solid. And that means that your legends are never going to wear off. And it looks like that's the case for both the primary and the secondary. Maybe not. No. I think the primary legends are double shot. I think the secondary legends are printed. You can sort of see, if I tilt it just right, get the light right, you might be able to see that the secondary legends are slightly raised. The primary ones sit flush with the black plastic. So, but these are, I think, double shot caps, which is great. That's really good to see. In terms of thickness, they're much better than those pack-in, the bonus caps down there. They're twice as thick, I believe, because they have the two layers. They got the black out exterior and that white interior. And so that actually makes for a very strong feeling cap. They're not like a really thick PBT cap that you're going to order, separately or anything, like aftermarket caps, but they're totally respectable for stock caps on a board especially, as I've said a couple of times, at this price point. Okay. A little bit of pinging. You can hear that, and the keys are a bit scratchy. You can hear it. But they have a nice tactile bump, and Outemu browns are a fairly known quantity. They're very, well, Outemu switches in general are very popular choices on these lower cost Chinese boards. We've seen them on a few boards that I've had in here. Although more commonly blues. Browns, less common. I'm a big fan of brown switches, so I really like the choice on this board. You can hear the pinging there. But let's get in nice and close here so you can hopefully see. Maybe not. It's hard to see, but so the switches sit kind of recessed down below this lip on the board. The lip sits more or less flush with the bottoms of the keycaps, you see. And it actually has a slight beveling to it. You can maybe tell there. Yeah, slight beveling, but that's nice. It looks good. These Outemu switches are of the clear casing variety, which are normally you see those on boards with backlighting with surface-mounted LEDs mounted on the PCB because it allows the light to shine through the switch. But you will find no such LEDs here except for, again, that indicator light, which hangs out under the function key, I believe. And then I think it said on that thing over there that there's a caps lock indicator underneath the caps lock key as well, which makes some sense. Okay. Good. Good, good, good. One more thing. I just want to take a quick look at the stabilizers here. So we'll pull off one of these chunkier caps. Let's pull off delete. Same situation here, as you can see. Double shot. Very nice. And presto. Cherry style stabilizers under there, as one would expect. More brown Outemu switches. Alright. Well, let's just quickly pop those back on. But my impressions of this board are very positive right off the bat. It feels, I know it's hard for you to appreciate this, but it feels solid. This is a dense board, and I really like that. So let's see if the typing experience and the usage experience holds up to the promise of the aesthetics and the feel. Let's go take it for a typing test. All right, so you just got a chance to watch me and listen to me type on this little board right here for a few minutes. So, what is the typing experience like? Well, in addition to the few minutes of typing that you just saw, I actually used this thing for weeks, several weeks, for all kinds of work. Lots of writing, lots of productivity work, video editing, and of course, gaming. And I have to say, it is a really pleasant little board to use. The typing experience is very good. The Outemu Brown switches are consistent performers. They have a nice tactile feel to them without being super clicky, but they're also not linear, so they have that little bump. The actuation force felt very even across the board, and all the switches work just fantastically, so no quality control issues with the switches, which is what I'd expect because Outemu actually makes really good switches. I did mention while we were opening the box there and taking a look at the board that the switches felt a little bit scratchy, and they do to some degree. They're not as smooth, for instance, as Gatoron switches, which are sort of one of the gold standards for smoothness in switch action, but they're comparable to older Cherry MX Brown switches, which is to say a little bit scratchy but not particularly noticeable. Overall, the action feels very satisfying. I felt like I could type quickly and accurately. In particular, I really liked the action of the spacebar on this board. Oftentimes you get spacebars that are very rattly, that just don't feel good to use, but this one feels precise. It feels just satisfying to use. And that's really the case across the whole board. So the typing experience from that perspective, very good. Let's talk briefly about wireless communication. So it is true that this board communicates exclusively through wireless. There is no communication through the USB ports, so no wired communication. That's unfortunate, but it's not a deal breaker, especially if you're buying a wireless keyboard for its wireless capabilities. And I have to say, strong performer in the wireless department. That little 2.4 gigahertz receiver does its job very well. I was able to type with this thing from across the room. I didn't test the full 10-meter range because I don't have the space to do that in our place here. But I did test it from various points throughout the room. It worked flawlessly. As soon as I plugged in that receiver, Windows recognized it, instantly basically started working. There was no pairing with, like, as you would have with Bluetooth, no issues like that to deal with. So overall, really easy wireless setup. I only tested it on a Windows 10 machine, but the manual does list support for, I think, Windows XP through Windows 10, as well as, I think, Linux and Android. I did not check about OS X, actually, so, but I imagine it's on there. I'd be very surprised if it wasn't. So at any rate, I'm sure that information is available on the product page, but the wireless performance of this little guy is very strong, and there was, very importantly, no noticeable lag when I was typing. This is something that I noticed with the Bluetooth keyboard that I tested, that An Pro that I've mentioned a couple of times. There was some perceptible input lag over the Bluetooth connection. Not the case with the 2.4 gigahertz wireless connection and that USB receiver. So I was very, very happy to see that. Finally, let's just talk quickly about layout here. This is sort of a some good, some bad. For one, the good, let's start with that. I really like the way they've done the arrow keys here. You can see that the arrow keys, maybe you can see, are along right here. 1, 2, 3, 4 arrow cluster. Function keys right here. So all you have to do is hold down your pinky here, and then you can use these as arrow keys. That is actually a really intuitive arrangement for the arrow keys. I really like what Velocifire has done there in terms of layout. Similarly, the delete key is just function backspace, which is nice and easy to remember, nice and accessible. That's where the good part ends, because unfortunately, as I mentioned in the unboxing, there are no other secondary function layer shortcuts on here. So there's no home key, there's no end key, no page up, no page down. A lot of people probably won't miss those, especially if you're using this primarily for gaming. But Velocifire did say that this is targeted at programmers. That's one of their primary demographics for this board. And I think programmers make use of those a lot. I am not a programmer myself, but even with a little bit of coding I have done, home and end are very important keys. Also, when I'm editing videos, I use home and end to seek to the front or the end of video clips. And so I definitely miss that functionality on this board. And because there is no software or no way of rebinding the keys, there's really no way to address that. So if you make heavy use of the navigation cluster keys, this board is not for you. It does not have those functions on it, which is a shame. But if you don't use those keys and you're like, why would you even care? Then, hey, it's not a problem. It's a non-issue for you. So overall, and of course I should briefly mention that the function row keys are just along the top there, a secondary function layer on the number keys. So hold down function and press your number keys to get those. Otherwise, everything was very straightforward with this board. It does have a little LED. I didn't show you this in the video, but just take my word for it. It has a little LED under the function button that lights up when you plug it in to show that it's charging. And I think it turns off when it's done charging. And there's also a blue LED underneath the caps lock key to indicate when it's when caps lock is on or off. But overall, yeah, a really strong performer, both from a technical standpoint, from the wireless standpoint, and also from just the way it feels. I really enjoy typing on this thing. It just feels good under the fingers. So, with all that said, let's do a little summary here where we talk about the pros and the cons of this little board. Alright, as you guys know, I like to start with the pros, so we'll talk about the good points of this board first, and there are quite a few of them. The first is that this thing is solid. It is compact, it is weighty, it feels like it's built like a tank, even though there's very little metal in it. The case is, of course, plastic, keycaps plastic. The back plate is metal, so that's nice, but overall it just has a feeling of solidity to it, and I'm pretty sure that you could drop this thing and it would be alright. Mind you, I didn't test it, but it certainly feels that way. The second thing that I really appreciate about this board is its minimalistic, clean aesthetic. It's a really great example of a board that does exactly what it needs to without any kind of crazy frills, cluttering up the aesthetic. I just really think that this board looks nice. Third thing that I really appreciate about this board is those dual charging ports. It's a small thing, but it's something I've never seen on another board, and it's just attention to detail like that that shows consideration for the user experience. So I really appreciate that there's these little micro USB charging ports on either side of the keyboard. Similarly, I really love that there's a physical on-off switch. This is something that I really wish the An Pro had, and this board's got it. So it's really nice to be able to just turn it off when you're not using it, conserve that battery power, and know that an accidental press of it is not accidentally going to interfere with something you're doing on screen with another keyboard, perhaps. Another really strong facet of this keyboard is that the wireless just works, and it works really well. There's no setup per se, there's no input lag, the range is good. Overall, the wireless on this thing is really, really solid. And the last really positive thing about this board that I want to call out is the battery life. I don't know exactly how long it lasts because I have not yet had it run out of batteries. I did charge it once when I took it out of the box initially, but I've used it since then on and off for weeks now, and it is still going strong. I have no idea how long it'll go before it dies. The manufacturer claims that it's got like over 1,000 hours of runtime or something like that on a single charge, and that battery charges in like 2 to 3 hours. So it barely sips power and it lasts for a very, very long time, which I think is commendable. And now we come to the cons, the things that I didn't like so much about this board. And there are a few cons with this keyboard, and depending on your usage case, they might be more serious or less serious. The first is that there's no wired mode. Now, if you're buying a wireless keyboard for its wireless functionality, you might ask, why does it matter? And that's a fair point. But this ties into my second con, actually, which is that that little wireless USB receiver is, for lack of a better term, proprietary. There's no way to replace it that I'm aware of beyond contacting the manufacturer, hoping you can get through to them, and maybe they'll send you another one. But no easy way to get a hold of another one as far as I know. So if it breaks or if you lose it, then you're kind of out of luck because, again, C.1, no wired mode. So between the two of those things, that's less than ideal. And that is a very small little dongle, and I think it's probably prone to, getting lost. That being said, the board does have that nice little magnetic socket on the back where you can pop in the dongle when you're not using it. So hopefully that's enough to keep it together, the board and the dongle, so that you don't lose it. But nonetheless, it just doesn't feel great to not have any recourse if you lose the thing. The other big con with this board is that really sparse secondary function layer, and this might be a deal breaker depending on who you are and what you're using this keyboard for. If you really need that navigation cluster, especially the home and end keys, then you're out of luck and this board just isn't suitable for you. If you never use that stuff and everything you need is covered on the 60 keys or 61 keys that are available on this board, as well as of course, the F keys are available on the secondary function layer, as are the arrow keys and the delete key. But aside from that, nothing. So if you make use of the navigation cluster regularly, that's going to be a big problem for you. And I really, really wish that Velocifire had found a way to just pack in a few more functions, like end, like home, like page up, like page down. That would have really been wonderful, but as it stands, not available. And because you can't rebind keys on this board, there's no way to swap out any other keys for that functionality, unfortunately. And finally, the last con with this board, and this is something that some of you who watch this series regularly might be able to anticipate, is what is the warranty situation with this board? I don't know. There is no information on the box. There is no warranty slip packed in with the keyboard. There is no, as far as I can find, information on the product page on Amazon. That's not to say the information isn't out there, it's just to say that it was not readily available, and that stuff really should be readily available and very clear up front. So I don't know if this board is warranted or if it is, for how long, and that's always a con in my books. So where does that leave us with the Velocifire's K61WS mechanical keyboard? Well, I really like this little board. Despite the shortcomings that I just mentioned, I really enjoyed using this board. For my purposes, I found it awfully appropriate, and I enjoyed typing on it. It just felt good to type on. From a value perspective, 40 US bucks, how can you go wrong? Or even less, depending. Like I said, I've seen it for a little bit less than that as well. And in this price bracket, it's really the only game in town if you want this combination of features. If you want a 60% wireless mechanical keyboard, you're not going to find anything else that does it for this price. And the fact that it uses a 2.4 gigahertz wireless connection as opposed to Bluetooth could be a boon for some people or a detriment to others. But nonetheless, I think that this is a fantastic value keyboard. A couple of minor quibbles and shortcomings notwithstanding. Again, if you're the kind of person that makes regular use of the nav cluster, then maybe this isn't the board for you. Or if you're a gamer that really wants RGB backlighting, obviously not present on this board. Or you want to be able to bind macros, again, not present on this board. But overall, if you're looking for an inexpensive, no frills, 60% wireless mechanical keyboard, then I can heartily recommend Velocifire's K61WS. And that will do it for this review. Another one in the bag. Special thanks, of course, to Velocifire for sending over the review sample that we took a look at here today. And of course, there is a purchase link down in the video description if you'd like to pick up one of these little boards for yourself. I hope you enjoyed today's review. I hope you found it informative. I hope you found it relaxing. And I look very forward to having you all back here next time for another episode of relaxing reviews. Bye for now, guys.